What I did was I went to my competitors who were in the lubricant or in the diesel business. And before they bought DEF trucks, I said, hey, why don't you just let me put the tank at your customer? I'll fill it, I'll bill you, and you bill your client. Third-party logistics. I was able to go from 0 to 20 sales reps, but I had 20 people effectively selling my DEF.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Small Business Mentor podcast, where we shine a light on the black holes of business growth with your host, Alan Pence. In each episode, we explore the leaps and bounds entrepreneurs make as they push their businesses beyond the 1 million mark into the realm of professional sustainable growth. Stay with us as we navigate the journey from brute force to finesse.
All right, today on the pod, we've got a different take on the fuel distribution industry. We have Dominic Tullo from TNR Oil Company. Welcome to the pod, Dominic. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Alan. I appreciate it, man. Happy to be here.
Let's do a quick hit on actually what the fuel distribution industry is like. I think you guys are in the diesel side. But yeah, just give us a quick overview of TNR.
Sure. So yeah, in the diesel side, very much so. You may have just heard a truck horn in the background. I'm literally sitting at a truck stop in this office, Tullo truck stop in South Kearney. Yeah, so literally in the epicenter of it right here. But running a diesel company is 24 hours on. We service people with their most critical fluid, we call it. Literally, it's the blood of the business. You cannot operate your trucks without it. So it's always a hurry up and wait. It's always I need that delivery yesterday. It's very high stress, quick. So we just really do our best to just manage that. And at the end of the day, it's a trucking company, but we sell to fleets, which is pretty unique in that, we actually deal with fleets basically exclusively in the commercial diesel business. So it benefits me that I get to have my finger on the pulse of what's really happening in the freight economy. We'll see volumes drop off before really anybody on a specific account. So being in the commercial diesel business is just interesting at best.
So you guys are the ones that bring the diesel fuel to different, is it mostly truck stops, or who are the customers?
So TNR Oil Company in this capacity actually only sells to commercial fleets. So if you have a 20 truck fleet operation, we'll actually sell directly to you in a couple of different ways. So we have a daytime shift that will go out and fill large above ground tanks, or we'll do construction sites. And then we have a nighttime fleet that goes out, same trucks are fitted the same way. They go out at night and they will literally fill each truck individually. We'll show up to you and we'll wet hose or mobile fueling or fleet fueling. It's called something different in every market, but we'll actually show up and fill your trucks directly. We do also have a division of TNR that sells to ExxonMobil gas stations, gasoline. And then the truck stop I'm situated at, Tullo Truck Stop, is effectively a client of TNR. So we wholesale fuel to ourselves. So TNR is the true wholesale division of the Tullo companies.
So the main customers of who have the fleets, they're fueling at their facility and those trucks are going locally. So they're not going to a truck stop farther down the road or something. Or if they do, they start with the fuel from their own facility.
That's correct. They'll start with the fuel at their own facility. So the overnight fueling is so effective because if you run a 30 truck fleet operation and you have to send each guy daily to go fill their trucks up, by the time you account for all of the labor time spent at the fuel rack, insurance on the truck, if you accumulate every cost you have per hour, you will spend about $180,000 per year in time loss of sending a truck to a truck stop if you have a 30 fleet operation. So what we do is we'll send a truck to you. We'll charge you maybe $50,000 or $60,000 a year for that service, and you'll net $120,000 difference. And that doesn't include the opportunity cost of time you're actually now able to deliver. So that's kind of the quick back of the napkin math value proposition for why you should have fuel on site.
Is it totally regional, this kind of operation?
This is regional. There are a few mid-market private equity owned who can do it at a larger scale. we do it hyper local. So that overnight fueling business, we really only go 10 miles for it. And we have the luxury of being in a super dense area. So we only have to. There's no reason to go further, but it's really a gallons per hour business the way we underwrite it. So we're hyper local with that specific product. Yes.
Right. So I guess you can charge a little less or incur less costs because you're in a dense region that like some super regional or national player is going to have a little more trouble with that, I guess. Right.
It's a pretty hard business to run at scale. Now, in terms of our clients are almost all regional. This doesn't really work if you're an over-the-road truck driver or a company that has trucks all over the country, because we obviously can't fuel you if you're in a yard in Texas, but you started in New Jersey. So most of our clients for this product type are regional or local and then do come back to the same facility nightly.
So what kind of figures can you give us on the business? I know there's some things you can say, some things you can't, but like revenue, employees, margins, what do you got?
TNR Oil Company has 20 full-time employees. We probably do around $200 million in revenue. And that sounds absurd, but mind you, my cost of goods sold is absolutely crazy. My net margins are probably between 2 to 3% on all of that. So revenue is a vanity metric in the fuel business. We're really off of margin per gallon, net margin per gallon. And then we actually underwrite the business on a profit per hour. So I have an idea of that my overnight fuel division can make around $170 per hour gross, and my cost to operate is probably around $125. So that's retained earnings, EBITDA margin, or probably that $25 per hour EBITDA margin. And that's how I underwrite to it.
Interesting. So, and then does that include all your 20 employees and everything?
Everything.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely everything.
And do you guys separate out like the truck stop from the gas business from the diesel business, or is that all together?
Yeah. So where I'm sitting today, the truck stop is a different company. Our truck parking is a different company. And then TNR Oil has its own divisions. So there's really 3 different companies being operated at the same time, all different balance sheets, all vastly different margins. The truck stops have larger margins than commercial diesel does. For example, if I'm delivering to an above ground tank with a full load on my daytime diesel shift, that margin will probably be between anywhere from 4 to 10 cents. Very, very lean. It's a highly commoditized service. All I'm doing is filling a tank. There's really no labor involved. Whereas my overnight stuff will have a larger margin, maybe 25 to 35 cents, because we're actually showing up and we're filling each truck individually. So I actually really like the overnight stuff. A lot of people don't, because receivables are a constant battle in a fuel business, right? I own the product that I'm selling. So I'd rather sell 4,000 gallons at a 25-cent margin than sell 4,000 at a 6-cent margin, because my capital layout is in theory the same, but my margin are quadruple on the overnight fuel work. So we also have to understand how that liquidity capacity also plays into my business. Yeah, let's say I have 10 trucks, and let's say I have $1 million receivable limit. If someone needs a $250,000 line of credit because they pay in net 10, net 20, and net 30 terms, they have to be 25% of my profitability if they're going to take 25% of my liquidity capacity. So you also have to think of liquidity more than just trucking capacity.
Interesting. So you're almost running like a little financing operation, right? You're a fuel financer, right? Or,
I issue non-secured line of credits. Yes. I mean, the fuel's burnt each day. So if they use it, there's nothing to go get.
Right.
Yeah.
But I guess if your financing dries up there, like there's inventory they can go take, right? Or
it's gone. The inventory's gone.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So but is there a possibility that you get stuck with inventory, I guess is the question.
No, we actually hold no inventory because the trucks go to the port to get loaded, and then they deliver that product the same day. When we do our quarterly, I maybe only show $30,000 or $40,000 of inventory of what's literally on the trucks. Yeah, there's no inventory. Yeah.
Interesting. So you get financing based on what? Like, what are you using banks to get financing?
TNR doesn't use debt mechanisms for this, but if it were to, there's a couple ways to go about it. you could, let's say you had $1 million of receivables of good standing clients. Assume all $1 million will pour in the next 10 to 30 days. You could go to a bank and say, I'll pay 11% interest, whatever, plus prime to basically have that cash now. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it would be you'd have to collateralize an alternative asset in order to get a line of credit. There's probably more ways to do it.
Your cash flow is good enough to keep buying, to sell, right?
Yeah, and purposefully so, to the point where like there's clients that we won't take on because it's like, well, that's just not worth the liquidity outlay. And the counterfactual is, well, maybe Dominic, the highest and best use of your cash is not to carry your receivables. Well, maybe to you it's not, but to me it is.
So on that, then your payment terms, do you have to get paid immediately upon delivery?
We're anywhere from 7 to 30 days.
Oh, okay. So you are floating 7 to 30 days, right? So you've got to underwrite the client, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I've gotten a lot better at it, and it's not something I think I'd have to be good at, but yeah, when you're growing, it's really important to get right. I originally didn't think underwriting would be something that I had to do, underwriting clients individually, but there's a lot of tools you can use, and I've gotten considerably better at it recently.
And so, say there's a recession. Is there a chance these guys go under, kind of thing? Or I guess you're looking at their balance sheet. Because they're a 30 truck operation. I can't imagine they're like the, stalwart of the world there. How does that work?
Yeah. So I actually don't get their balance sheet. That's not how I underwrite it. I don't get that much clarity on their underwriting. What we first do is we take their information and we dump it into a database, and the database can tell us if the person is creditworthy. If they are creditworthy, I can actually take an insurance policy out against that specific client. And that is really beneficial. Additionally, I call the trade references. I look at the business. I call maybe other people who've worked with them. Maybe I'll look at maybe I'll even look at where they're located and call their landlord and just say, hey, is this person even allowed to have fuel at this facility? So just trying to get like a full snapshot of what the company is like. But yeah, I mean, we issue credit, and we do so pretty quickly. I have 1,000 clients. So, you can't look at everybody the same way. If somebody needs, 2 or 3 days of credit versus someone who needs 30, it's a whole different process.
That's fascinating. And so overall, you're probably running somewhere in the range of a $5 million EBITDA kind of business.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate for TNR.
Yeah. So when you look at the revenue, you're like, oh, this is crap, right? You're getting 2.5%. But when you look at the employees, the profit per employee on that is pretty tremendous, because you're like, I usually say it's about 200. I mean, this is more professional services, like if you got a SaaS company, whatever, but, you're basically doing about $1 million in revenue for every 5 employees, 200,000 per employee, some more, some a little more, some a little less. And, that'll end up being like a 10 to 20% profitability business based on, how much you're paying, blah, blah, blah. So you're really talking on 5 million, someone's making 500 to $1 million in EBITDA. You've got 20 employees and you're making 5 million in EBITDA. So that's an awesome business from an employee standpoint, right? Maybe not from a revenue standpoint, but the reality is that revenue is complete. Like you said, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king, right? So that's just pass through. That's just materials that get passed through, right? They're not yours. They don't really mean anything. It sounds like a great business.
It is. And I think what makes TNR so special is that we're one of the last of the Mohegans in terms of we're a family owned and operated business. I'm 4th generation. My brother's 10 years older than me, also 4th generation, obviously. And we operate it with a lot of technology, a lot of new ideas, a lot of fresh approaches, very modern culture. But we have the longstanding and creditworthiness of an 85-year-old business, whereas my competitors are mostly private equity bought by this point because the next generation had no interest. So we're one of the last companies that will still actually send a sales rep in person to you and actually do a deal and make sure that everything is okay and follow up with you and offer that customer service. A lot of my competitors have literally just been bought out, salesmen riffed, and replaced with a 1-800 number. And my industry is just not ready for that yet. So we just are going to continue to add more product lines. So one of my largest product lines is actually not even diesel. It's my diesel exhaust fluid business. So DEF was federally mandated in 2011 for every diesel burning heavy duty truck. And it sits in that blue tank with the blue cap next to the diesel tank when you see a heavy duty truck. Okay. That's DEF. And it's effectively a urea solution that when mixed into the emissions of a truck, the truck burns virtually emissionless. Every heavy duty diesel truck uses it post 2011. We got into it early. I thought it would just be an accessory to our diesel business. We're running higher EBITDA margins on the DEF division now than we are on our diesel. We sell that to about 800 fleets in the tri-state area. And the way we do it is we install 300-gallon tanks at each client. It's a non-hazardous product, so we don't need any permitting. Slap a tank down there. We put a remote gauge on that tank. So when the tank is low, we'll dispatch a truck automatically. And it's given us tremendous efficiency and just nobody really in my market's really looking at it that way. So now we're just going to keep upselling. Now we have a sturdy book of DEF clients. The next step is to sell them commercial grade lubricants, industrial lubricants, grease, 15W40 grease. And that's kind of the next step. So now we're just going to keep upselling our clients who like our style.
So how are they doing this DEF? Like, how are competitors getting it to people?
Often the same way, but they won't use any technology. So when I route a truck, imagine that I'm right on the outskirts of New York City, and Route 95 goes effectively from New York City to Delaware, right? Imagine that. And what my competitors will do is they will say they have clients all the way down that 95 corridor. They're just going to guess when those people are going to take about 200 gallons per client. And the route will be very inefficient whereas what we do is we have all of that transparency, the data, we know it. So when we load our truck with 4,000 gallons, we're going to make sure it comes back empty because we have the critical mass, because our pricing is lower, because we make larger deliveries per delivery. So that's really how we look at it differently. The competitors may use the same trucks. They may use the same software in the office. They may talk the same way, but they're not actually doing it. They're just guessing because they don't have that visibility. And that visibility cost me $100,000 per year on like all the equipment. But I actually think it like gives me 2 extra trucks worth of capacity because I can run people down to 10%. Customer will call me and say, Dominic, I'm empty. That's what they all say in the fuel business. Everyone's empty. It's always an emergency. And I can look at a line and say, yeah, no problem. I can see you have 25% left and you use about 5 gallons a day. So you'll actually be good for 2 weeks, but I will be there within 3 days. And then the customer's happy. It's just a different approach.
So why isn't PE doing that? Are they just not realizing the opportunity, like the PE-backed companies?
Alan, it's a really good question. I just think they don't understand the business. I think private equity works well in a lot of industries. I don't think trucking is one of them. And we can see that. There's been a lot of private equity failures in the business. I'll tell you a story specifically. There's a company in Staten Island who've been around a very long time. And they were the largest in the New York City metro for selling industrial heavy grade lubricants, right? It's probably the largest market in the country. And they're probably doing $7 to $10 million in EBITDA, if I had to guess. Huge company. And they got bought by a Brazilian private equity business. And the Brazilian folks basically riffed all the salesmen. And they never assigned new people to even go see the accounts. And that's one situation. But their mentality is, we're just going to buy it. We don't care. If we lose 25%, we don't care. And then they end up just hemorrhaging clients. Most of those clients converted over to us. We just welcome those sales reps with open arms and say, hey, the world you were used to, we'll give it to you. And then we'll actually build our business around the services that you're used to selling. That's why we're getting into the lubricant business. They just don't get it.
It's interesting because you hear, there's a couple of guys on small business Twitter like Chris Hoffman and John Wilson, and they'll talk. They're in like HVAC, right? So home services, and they'll talk about the roll up. Their industry is getting rolled up left and right? But they're just sitting there waiting to catch all the outcome of that, right? And they're gonna hemorrhage a bunch of clients. And I guess from their perspective, if we can cut costs, we hemorrhage a certain amount of clients, and we just throw a bunch of stuff together, we'll come out ahead. And we don't really getting down into the niches and operating at the level you are. Maybe it's not worth it because they got to do this in 5 years and turn it around, right? So PE comes in, it's bad, but it also creates a ton of opportunity for people like you, right?
We love it. We're thrilled about it.
That's cool. So sounds to me like you guys have gone down this route of like taking a customer set, and then trying to build service product lines around the customer set rather than the reverse, right? So so you're kind of saying, hey, I want these regional, local 30 whatever truck operations, and then I'm going to do the stuff that they really need, and I'm just going to keep adding services to that.
I'll even add services around a salesman. So if a salesman comes in and has a great oil book of business, but I don't sell oil yet, and I see that there's enough there, I will actually grow an oil division around a salesman too.
Oh, this is fascinating. So I love this because it's like the one advantage you can have is this local basis, right? And you're just grabbing that advantage and then monetizing it all the way down. So that's brilliant. So you talked a little bit about applying tech to the business, which again is a great playbook, right? So you talked about one thing, but where else have you guys brought technology in?
When I started here in 2015, right out of college, I was 21 years old. We were servicing 20 clients. We put a new tech stack in to do all of our billing, and all of our billing is now done digitally. People just literally need to just say, yes, this looks right, and it goes through. We put a PDI's software in. It was called Ascend at the time. I don't think it's called that anymore. They keep buying and rolling up. We now service around 900 ship-tos. We deliver to 900 facilities, and it's the same 3 people doing billing. We haven't added any clerical staff in the office. So that's been very helpful too. But it's really that's really it. That and telemetry is really it. Nothing is like, we haven't built anything proprietary that's groundbreaking. It's all very, very basic.
Yeah. And the telemetry, was that a commercially available product, or you have to adapt something?
Commercially available.
Was it for DEF?
It's for any product. My family used to be in the heating oil business, and it's similar, except you're delivering to houses where you'd be filling 275-gallon heating oil tanks. And one of the partners here, in my third generation partner, said, if we could have done anything different, we would have loved to have telemetry on all those tanks. So that expertise is why we started the DEF business with that telemetry.
Okay, well, that's great. I love this business. I actually want to go buy one of these businesses now. I always do. Anytime I talk to someone, I'm like, I want to buy that business.
Just start from scratch.
Yeah, you think so? That's actually another theme I'm seeing is like, isn't it better to just build a lot of stuff now that everything's so expensive? It's like,
or buy a tiny one.
Yeah, buy a tiny one. Yeah, well, maybe the Washington, D.C. area will get a new fuel distributor. Okay, so you talked a little bit about the different generations. So tell us how this all started. When was this, like early 1900s or?
Yeah, early 1900s. I guess this is great grandparents came over from Italy, and they start doing ice and coal. This is pre-refrigeration. So imagine large blocks of ice that would have to be delivered to your house. Probably, I would guess every other day. I don't actually know how long that would last. Large blocks of ice with that big, sharp pick to deliver it. And pre-refrigeration, so doing that, and then coal for heat. And then as times rolled on, family got hooked up with Esso at the time. And Esso said, well, why don't you start doing heating oil? So they started delivering heating oil in Hudson County, New Jersey, and Bergen County, Passaic, Essex County, New Jersey. They actually rolled up like 12 companies and got pretty big. At one point, probably the largest heating oil business in New Jersey. which is the most densely populated area of New Jersey too, which is the most densely populated state in the country, obviously. So
You're a scion of early private equity, huh?
yeah, I guess, but I mean, it was all bootstrapped. Like my family didn't even know how to raise like debt to do that. Like they're just doing it out of pocket. It was very non-sophisticated, just very easy business to do that. They worked hard. That's how they did it. So they rolled up heating oil businesses. The truck stop I'm sitting at, I believe they bought in 1972. There's a nice aerial of it on my Twitter. It didn't always look like that. It was just an oversized gas station. Where I am is a peninsula called South Kearney. If you see the opening of the Sopranos intro, you will see actually a lot of parts of South Kearney. You would never go through it unless you had to. It's zoned 100% industrial where I am, so there's no retail. There's no one lives here. But yeah, Sopranos intro has a lot of South Kearney in it, and a lot of the actual footage takes place in South Kearney. So there's a lot of lineage down here. Family bought this in 1972, and then it was meadowlands. It was infill land. It was literally filled in with contaminated dirt to make it solid. They made it exist. So when my family bought it in the 70s, they basically could give it to you. Nobody wanted to be down here, but they just hung out and stayed in business. And then at a point, but probably between the 80s and 90s, we became ExxonMobil's in-house gasoline carrier. So ExxonMobil Exxon at the time actually owned all the gas stations in this part of New Jersey. And we were a common carrier or a hauler to deliver gasoline to those gas stations, which we didn't own, we didn't operate, just a common carrier transporter. My dad's claim to fame is at one point he was doing 1 million gallons per day in gasoline for ExxonMobil gas stations in this market. He sold that in 2001. He sold it because it was extremely high stress. It was just basically a terrible business. It's not fun to only have one client that can really bully you around on rates. He got out of it when he could. I actually don't think he would still be here today if he didn't get out of it. Those are his words, not mine. The stress was just too much. Sold that. That was all operated out of this truck stop as well. And then they operated the Tullo truck stop, the New Jersey truck stop, which is down the road from me. And then, now we're fourth generation heating oil business, sold in 2015. When we sold it, we had 4 trucks left over. The company that bought them didn't want the trucks. We had signed a non-compete. We wouldn't sell heating oil. So my first assignment here was to find use for these 4 trucks. And that's when we got into the commercial refueling and direct commercial fuel.
Oh, so this is like totally a new business, basically.
Yeah, this is a startup within the Tullo companies. I stand on the shoulders of giants, but it's really a new company, and we had to build it from scratch. We had no marketing budget. We weren't given lump sums of cash to get this thing off the ground. Until maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was the dispatcher. I was the supervisor. I was the only salesman. I was doing collections. So I've literally touched every part of this business.
Wow. So they gave you the trucks and that's about it?
They gave me the trucks. And the way I actually hyperscaled the DEF business was we were the first to enter the market with like the right truck to deliver this stuff quickly. If you look at one of my DEF trucks, it looks like a diesel truck. It acts like a diesel truck, but there's DEF in it. And it pumps off very quickly. So we can make fast deliveries. What I did was I went to my competitors who were in the lubricant or in the diesel business. And before they bought DEF trucks, I said, hey, why don't you just let me put the tank at your customer? I'll fill it. I'll bill you and you bill your client, third-party logistics. And I was able to go from 0 to 20 sales reps. I say that air quotes, 20 air quotes, because they're not on my payroll, but I had 20 people effectively selling my DEF. And I was able to go from like 100 to 600 clients in like 3 years by doing that. And that's still a core part of my business.
And so are other family members involved at this point?
Oh, very much. My brother, Alex, 10 years older than me, he's mostly focused on the tech and the back end of this company and making all of these systems work. The price of diesel changes daily. My cost of goods sold changes daily. So there's a lot that has to go on to get that right, and price notifications. My father, Alex, is 65 years old. We joke he's semi-retired, but he's here every day. He's having a good time. He'll never actually retire. He's going to show up every single day. That's just his style. The guys like that are just cut different. And then he's got two partners who are still in the business.
Then how did it work, you guys taking over? Like, how did you manage? Because like, to me, fourth generation, it's like, how many people are involved, tangentially involved in this thing? Did they use some of the money to pay people off, like cash people out? Like, how did all that work?
So my dad actually has, I think, 6 siblings or 5 siblings. And now there's only 3 owners on paper. I basically represent my dad's ownership. At this point, my dad just wants to show up. He wants to service the trucks, still loves to overlook the service on the trucks, and just have a place to hang out, for lack of a better term. Is not the type of guy to stay home. So that's kind of how we handle his side of it. And then the other 2 owners, there's enough business here. So like the Tullo truck stop requires its whole own management team. That's got about probably 20 employees as well. So a family member operates those. And then the other family member, we have about probably 200 units of multifamily. So, that's managed as well by family members. I really haven't even gotten to the meat and potatoes of our business. It's the truck parking. So around where I'm located, we operate a pretty good amount of truck parking for people to park trucks on a monthly, annual basis, and then that requires a good amount of management as well.
So there's like interlocking ownership of all these things amongst those 3 people, or are there more than?
Yeah, it's basically all a third. And there's just enough to keep these people busy. If there wasn't enough to keep 3 owners busy and satisfied, it would probably be a nightmare.
So how were they able to get it to a third in the 3rd generation?
There were 2 sisters who had no interest. They were bought out many, many moons ago. And then there was 1 owner who was bought out 5 or 6 years ago. He was just ready to get out. And then he was just offered. We took some bank financing to buy him out. That's the only debt that we have.
Is there like a board running all this, or is it just sort of like, hey, you got your thing, send us the checks from that and we'll send you the checks from our thing? And
basically, there's no board. I wish there was. Family businesses are not that cut and dry. I don't have a title. I don't have an employment contract. I call myself the general manager for, I don't know what else to call myself. When it comes to TNR Oil Company, I would say that that's a company that I have complete autonomy over. Like, I really do run the day to day. I make all the decisions with my brother, and that company, like, we don't really have to go to the owners to do things unless we're buying trucks. We'll go to the owners and say, hey, look, per demand, we're going to buy a truck now. Won't show up for 8 months. So like big purchases, we'll all kind of communicate and say, hey, look, we have to make a big purchase or an investment in something. Other than that, if it's kind of day-to-day stuff, it's do your thing. Don't run it into the ground. But I wish it was more specific and sophisticated. Unfortunately, it's not.
Yeah, and then when it passes to the 4th generation, right, the ownership, then it's going to expand again.
Yeah, it could. I would say we're in the 3rd inning of the transfer to the 4th generation. Where we're just starting to, roll paperwork and get that all settled down. It's complicated. There's a lot of tax implications to be considered. If you have any specific questions, I'll answer them.
I think it's fascinating. Like, it sounds to me like the way that it got managed was there were enough different kinds of businesses that different people could take the lead. And then as people kind of peel off, they're not interested in it. There was enough to buy them out. Right. And enough agreement so that just over time, you're like, more people get involved, complicated, buy out, then you're less complicated, and then you kind of do it again and go back. Right. So the question is, like, going forward, can you just keep it going? And like, it's fascinating to me that you've been able to do it.
I think the easiest way to make it happen in the future is to minimize the amount of operating entities. So it's not complicated when it comes to real estate because it's very easy to just cut checks and then just basically split the retained earnings and keep a little bit of piggy bank for a rainy day. That stuff is pretty easy. Those are all triple net leases. There's no buildings on this land. It's literally just place to park trucks. So that, I think, is probably the end game, is to eventually get away from all the operating entities and just have land. have that land on good long-term leases with a diversified tenant basket, and then just cut checks. That's probably the only way. Or I would buy the other partners out of TNR Oil Company.
But there are a bunch of private equity people that'd love to do that. So finance.
There are, and we've gotten close to it. We've gotten close to almost selling the company in the past before. But just, you know what? It's just not worth it. It's just to replace the income and replace the business and replace the goodwill. I'd rather just have a nice, very manageable oil company and just operate it.
Yeah, that's cool. So what was your take on like joining the business? I mean, it sounds like you did it right away. So was it ever a question or?
It was. I started pumping gas for my dad when I was 11 years old at one of his gas stations that he owns separate from this Tullo entity.
Yes, and for other people who have never been to Jersey, you are not allowed to pump your own gas in the state of New Jersey.
Correct. Yeah, correct. You still can't. And Alan, just as a kid growing up, like that was probably one of the best experiences that I could have had in hindsight. Like being handed a wad of cash, learn to count it, learn to manage it, keep it in order, and then talk to 100 adults per day in some capacity. Probably part of the lining that made me who I am. So I've always been around this business. My mom and dad on like their side hustles have been buying and flipping houses and buying apartment buildings and so like multifamily rentals my whole life. So I've seen all that happen. So I've always been around small business and around like hustle and grit. And then I studied small business and entrepreneurship at Quinnipiac University, which was awesome because I actually like got to learn about finance in how it pertains to small businesses, not just general finance. If you had asked me when I was in college, I would have told you I wouldn't have started working here until I was 30 years old. But my dad ended up buying a partner out the year that I graduated. And just there was a role for me and I just got into it. And when I started here, there was no job titles again. There was no employment deals. There was just, hey, you just come here and figure it out. And I just gravitated towards sales.
And I guess your equity comes from inheritance, right? So you're building equity.
Which I'm lucky because my dad is a great successor. I'm the successor. He's the successee. My dad's a great successee. Like he's not ego driven, not really cash motivated, like just wants to do the right thing and see the company continue to go in the right direction. And we just have that level of trust. So I would say like if anyone's listening and they're in the same situation I am, like don't just assume it's going to work out. Like don't just blindly spend 10 years of your life like working for your parents, especially if they have partners, and think that you're just going to end up with the business. Like it's just not that simple. Sometimes like being successed is actually a very difficult thing for people to like be willing to take the back seat and be able to watch the next generation run with it is definitely not for everybody. So like if you're considering joining your family business, you need to just be really honest with yourself and look at the person and say, although this is my dad, look at them objectively. Does it look like he's ever going to be willing to let go? And if he's not, then I hate to break it to you, it's probably not a good idea to spend your time working for him because it may just be detrimental to your relationship. My father and I have a really, really balanced relationship in that we know when we're talking to each other as father, son, and we know when we're talking to each other as business partners. And I'll be blunt with you. My father and I don't argue often, but on Friday, actually this past Friday, we did about something that I was very unpleased about. And although we argued, within 10 minutes, we're shaking hands. We're on the same team. This is a common goal. No hard feelings. Doesn't affect our relationship. And I think that's really hard for people to do. And I think that's what makes us so unique. So just be really honest with yourself if you're going to get into what I'm doing.
I feel like businesses become part of people's identities. So it's very difficult for older guys to give up the business because it's really just a part of who they are. And like anybody who's thinking about it, go read the Mondavi biography and it's spooky. Like he got in a fist fight, I think with his father, Robert Mondavi, and left Charles Krug, I think was the name of the vineyard that they owned, and started Mondavi. And then he essentially ends up in the same situation with his kid. So it's like, oh my God, you just like played out the same story. Like,
I'm going to try to sway my children away from doing it. And if they do want to do it, I think a happy accident here was I kind of started my own division. So yeah, my dad still holds on to the division he's in. I'm not interested in that division. Frankly, there's no future in the gasoline division, and that's fine. But I built something to step into to say, well, this is mine. And I actually made it. So you tend to have a chip on your shoulder too when you're come from like my position. I get a lot of, not a lot, but you get the occasional guy on Twitter who's like, well, you inherited this company. What do you know? You're silver spoon. What do you know? A lot of people wouldn't want to do what I've done to land this plane. It's been very messy. It's been very complicated. Just know what you're getting into. If you're going to join a family business, it's not as simple as you think. So maybe the answer is start a new division within the family business.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. The fact that they sold a bunch of other stuff and then you're starting something new. So, I heard a guy recently who's written a lot about it, and he was in a family business and sold, and he does a lot of consulting on it. And he was basically like, his rule is, number one, you don't have any legacy. It doesn't mean anything. It was sort of his thing. And he was like, if the kids want to take over, if some group of the kids want to take over the business, they need to buy it, and they need to buy it at a third party price. And like, that's basically like, so he's like, yeah, everybody else gets their inheritance from you, and then you take the shot, but you lose the inheritance. Right. So, kind of making it an objective third party thing. And like, in reality, like, you'll inherit some real estate or something, but like, really you started a business that you built yourself.
Yeah, you have to take the risk. Like, I don't get two bites at my inheritance. I'm taking my inheritance in the companies, the operating entities. And if I don't do well with them, it's my own problem.
All right. Well, given that we mentioned The Sopranos, right? So you guys are running a gas business and various other things throughout the last century. I mean, there must be some crazy stories. So you got like Russian mobsters, you got Italian like, tell us a couple of your best stories. What about skimming and all that kind of stuff?
We were part of a fuel scam probably about 6 months ago. Pretty sophisticated fuel scam. So the way it works here, if you want to open an account, is I send you a credit application, you fill it out. You have to personally guarantee, you have to put your social security number, your address, your home address, like full blown profile on who you are. We had a woman call into the office around 3:30 one day. She didn't speak English, very common. So I turned her over to somebody in my office who speaks Spanish. They explain this. This is all the paperwork you have to fill out. They fill the paperwork out. Paperwork comes in. Everything looks great. It's a bourbon company from New Jersey. It's big. You can Google it. The address all matches. Paperwork looks great. Then I submit the information to my insurance company. Insurance company says everything looks great. They're a 4 out of 10 credit, which is fantastic in the way we look at it. Fantastic. And you're covered for up to $50,000 if they don't pay you. Okay, fantastic. I have a delivery sent the next morning. We sent about $10,000 of product over there to a facility that looked like it looked like a distribution facility for liquor. So everything looked pretty much fine. Long story short, we made 2 more deliveries, and it turns out that we were basically being double brokered. So liquor company sends the paperwork in, but they're actually not the liquor company they say they are. So all the information's right, but they've stolen all the information. They are then lining up deliveries to be made in cash. So when we're going and we're making this delivery, someone's showing up when we leave, acting like they're us, taking the delivery in cash, and then all the information they gave us was stolen. So when we draft the account, it doesn't work. There's no money that actually hits our account. The information's stolen or fake. So that's a double brokering scam. It was nuts. I lost a lot of sleep over it. Thankfully, I only lost 20 grand. It could have been way worse. I caught it about 36 hours into it happening. And the way I caught it was just kind of lucky, because after we made 3 deliveries, which again, it's not unheard of to make 3 deliveries for a massive distribution company in that period of time. They asked for a 4th delivery of 10,000 gallons the same day. And my face just like, Alan, my face just lit on fire. I was like, no, something's not right. So that's one of the fuel scams that I've been a part of.
So the facility was correct, but they were just pretending. They stole that facility's info, and then they showed up pretending to be you. They took your delivery and then resold it
for cash. So the people who actually bought the fuel, this is an ongoing investigation, but the people who actually bought the fuel were, I got to imagine they were in on it because they're buying the fuel so cheap. They're getting it. If the fuel's usually $4 a gallon, they're probably getting it for $2 because they know they're buying hot fuel. They just don't think that no one will figure it out.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah. As far as like organized crime in the fuel business, I will tell you, or not even a fuel business, just South Kearney specifically, it doesn't exist in the capacity it used to. You still have a couple like down the generation, like people who still think that they are what that used to be. So there's still whispers and remnants of it, but I've never really seen anything too crazy firsthand. Back in the day, we used to have not mob related, but we used to have like holdups outside, like just like regular robberies. This used to be a very dangerous area, but no, thankfully, I mean, if there's one thing I've never met my grandfather. He died when he was 62. I was born a year after he died. His name was Dominick. From what I understand, he was an absolute hothead, very quick with the hands if he had to be, tough guy. And that's how he was able to fend off all of the crime families from taking our land or taking a vig on our land. Was he just pushed back really hard. And when he died, my father was 33, and my father inherited that role of being the guy who was able to look at the people coming to extort you and tell them the right way that it's not going to happen in a way that won't get you hurt. And you can continue to operate, but they know like, oh, don't screw with Alex Tullo. Like it's just not worth your time. He's connected enough to know what you're doing and know how to stop it. So I just think we're one of the few outlier families who's like been able to stay here as long as we have and skate through and remain clean, but fend off the dirty.
Well, I can imagine. I heard of the whole, wasn't there like a whole Russian mob fuel scam too, like 15 years ago?
There was a Russian mob fuel scam. They have walked into this office. It was before I was here. They have walked into this office and they tried to sell you fuel without tax. I think was the bit. My dad and Lady Angela, who works at this office, has been here 30 years. The way they describe it was they had heard about it a million times. So by the time it got here, they were like, please leave. We're not interested. Just like basically downplaying it, like not being like outright, hey, you're trying to scam me. Just be, oh, no, we're not interested. Like you kind of just got to play stupid and be like, yeah, you may know what's going on, but you can't out them because they may become hostile or just it's just not worth the confrontation. Like knowing how to avoid confrontation with bad people is very important.
So my suggestion is if you're going to start this business, maybe Atlanta, maybe Utah, somewhere like that, you know, the Mormons don't like break your kneecaps.
You'd be fine in New Jersey. I wouldn't suggest 5 boroughs.
Well, Dominic, this has been awesome. Sorry, I kept you a little over. I had to hear the stories. Super fantastic. If people want to reach out, what's the best way to contact you?
Twitter. Please just hit me on Twitter. I'm at Dominic_Tullo.
And that's DOMINICKTULLO.
Yeah, very active on there. I post very candidly on there, like real things that I'm going through in my business. So if you want to hear more, just go there.
I think you need to change your name to Fuel Distribution Guy.
Dude, I think the guys are all canceled.
Are the guys dead now after after what was it, Jake or somebody? That was
Being a non is no longer good, bro.
Well, you know about that, right? So you avoided the whole thing from the beginning, right? You know how to talk to difficult people without, the right way, without them becoming hostile. Right?
Exactly.
All right, Dominic, that was great. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Alan. Take care.
You've been listening to the Small Business Mentor podcast, brought to you by Alan Pence. For more insights on how to navigate your business through its black holes, visit @apence on X. Don't forget to search for Small Business Mentor in your podcast app to subscribe. Thank you for joining us, and here's to your next leap in business growth.